Good morning. I'm thinking about this word we, W-E, we, and what it means when we talk about collectives. I come across the word we quite a lot. I have been doing a bit of a project of work about it, but I come across a lot on YouTube, people using we to represent either themselves and a group of people they perhaps are in opposition to, or a collective that they feel that they're addressing and that they feel unity with. So this word "we," but it seems to me that it's a word that has a number of different interpretations, really, and it's one that may even have evolved over time. I'm thinking it's not so much in its actuality, but in the way that we imagine it. I suppose I'm thinking back to the way that "we" is used in a lot of kind of novels and films and those kind of things at the beginning of the 20th century, early part of the 20th century. The one that I'm particularly interested in right now is a novel written by a Russian novelist called Yevgeny Zamyatin, called We, translated as We, which I think was written about 1923, something like that. And it was written in Russian, obviously, and it's written from a perspective of someone who has come through the Russian Revolution and seen how that works. But he also worked in the UK. He worked in the shipyards. I can't remember where now, either in Glasgow or Tyneside. Anyway, he worked in the shipyards, and he'd had some experience of kind of industrial processes within those kind of circumstances, and some perhaps abuses of industrial processes and the kind of commodification of work and the turning of craftsmen, skilled labourers into a kind of commodity. So he's coming at this idea of collectivization of groups from both those experiences, both from the experience of the Russian Revolution and from a particular kind of Taylorist approach to industry. And so we is the novel we is the kind of classic, sets the agenda really for that kind of classic collective, understanding of a collective in which the individual is absorbed into the group, in which individual idiosyncrasies are ironed out, or are diminished or reduced or undervalued. People start to be interchangeable as ciphers. So the characters in We, for example, are all just known by numbers, D503, and so on. They all wear the same clothes. They're all dressed in grey. So in the novel, which was later borrowed by George Orwell for 1984 and by Aldous Huxley for Brave New World, that kind of sets that image, you know what I mean? The image that we always bring to mind, I think, when we think about Soviet communism or some versions of Chinese collective action. These identikit people almost like robots marching in lines to these factories. You get images like that in films like Metropolis, made around about the same time, early part of the 20th century. So there's that image of we, the collective, which is a dystopian vision of a collective in which to embrace a collective, to be part of a collective, means to surrender oneself, particularly surrender one's identity and one's will to the will of the masses, those kind of things. And I think it does persist a bit. In Star Trek, the image of the Borg is like that. The Borg is horrific because individuality is subjugated to the will of the collective, the we of the Borg. And I think, in some ways, I think that the Borg in Star Trek is a little bit of a recap of totalitarian fear, that fear of communism, particularly. Anyhow, what I've been thinking about recently is the idea that this we, the modern version of we, is perhaps a little bit different to that. And I suppose I thought this most recently, actually, when I was watching a video here on YouTube about the Anonymous organisation. And it was, it's very interesting. But of course, the slogan, one of the slogans of Anonymous, uses the word "we" quite a lot, doesn't it? We are, I can't remember it now. Expect us is how it ends. Anyway, we are legion. We are whatever. Expect us. So they talk about we, the collective, there. But I think it's a different we, isn't it? It's a different understanding of the collective than these interchangeable identikit units, really, that can just form part of an undifferentiated mass. The we of Anonymous necessarily is individuals. They are necessarily fully articulated, fully intentional agents connected in a way that doesn't reduce that individuality. And I think you also find it, as well as in Anonymous, which and things like 4chan, is you also find it in a lot of the ideas to do with collective activity, particularly that facilitated by technology. For example, in Clay Shirky's book, what's it called? Here Comes Everybody. He writes a lot about things like open source software or Wikipedia, or all the kind of collective action stuffs in which collective action produces intelligent behavior and complex behavior which can't be easily achieved through organization or through institutional organization, as opposed to the collective organization of lots of individuals coming together through technological means. You also find it in Wisdom of Crowds, the Surowiecki book. It talks about it, some of his examples are the same, actually, and about how that idea of the wisdom of crowds has kind of taken over from what used to be the common sense logic that crowds were inherently stupid, the foolishness of crowds. There's a Mackay book called something like that, isn't it? Perhaps it'll come back to me. But the old idea was that the collective was either malevolent in a kind of Borg-like totalitarian way, or it was inherently stupid and mob-like. But modern versions of crowds might suggest that they're quite wise at times, or can be organised in ways which encourages wisdom as opposed to encourages stupidity. And it's in that, I think it's Charles Ledbetter, is it? A book called We Think. You find it in there as well. Again, how is collective activity mobilised in different ways that prevent it either collapsing into a Borg totalitarian or just invoking that stereotype of what collective action might look like. Stop it doing that, or it becoming mob-like, where the IQ of a crowd is found by taking the average IQ and dividing it by the number of people present, supposedly. Anyway, yeah, that's just something I'm thinking about right now, because I like the idea of an intelligent we. I like the idea of a collective, an organisation, in the loosest sense of that term, a way of being organised, of willfully allowing oneself to be part of an organisation that doesn't require the surrendering of individuality and all that involves, really. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts on what it means to be a we in this beginning of this period of our collective history together on this planet, I'd be interested to hear what you've got to say. Thanks very much. Bye.